Captain Aaron Blake stood at the edge of the inner hangar and looked down at the hull. The ship was old and dark, but it held a weight that made his chest tight. He could not explain the feeling. The metal smelled faintly of dust and oil, and a cool wind moved through the broken vents. He had led many missions in his life, but he had never stood inside something so ancient and so quiet. Commander Laura Price walked beside him. Her boots made soft sounds on the grated floor. She had a map of the ship on a tablet, and her eyes moved across it like a teacher pointing out lessons. She kept her voice low. "We should not rush," she said. "We need to learn every piece we can." Aaron nodded. He had been the first to touch the pillar that sat in the center of the hangar. The pillar had been carved with symbols that no one recognized. When his hand hit the surface, it had hummed and a pale light had run up his arm. The light had not burned him. It had felt like a memory waking up. That single touch had changed everything. They had found the ship under the red soil of Mars. It had been buried and hidden for a very long time. Satellites had noticed a strange pattern under the crust and sent a probe. The probe sent back images that made the world stop. People watched the feeds and saw angles and curves that did not match any human design. The governments agreed. A joint team was sent. Aaron and Laura had been picked for the lead team because they knew each other and because they both had the quiet strength the mission needed. Inside the ship, other members of the expedition moved like careful ghosts. Daniel Ross was a systems engineer. He knelt beside a panel and shone a torch into its seams. His fingers were steady. He spoke softly into his recorder. "Power cores show residual charge," he said. "Not active in full, but present." Maria Hill, a historian, walked through the corridors with a small scanner. The scanner made soft beeps as it read symbols on the walls. Maria had been the first to notice a pattern in the glyphs. The glyphs matched nothing in any human language. They were not like the symbols found in old ruins or in early manuscripts. They were different. They curved in ways that made Maria think of stars. Outside, the world watched. The awakening had been broadcast. People around the planet argued on news feeds and in quiet kitchens. Some said this was a threat and wanted the ships destroyed. Others said the ships were a treasure. The Armada under the ground was more than one ship. There were many hulls, dark like sleeping whales. The idea that humans had built such machines made some officials uneasy. Some leaders wrote letters and demanded caution. Back inside, Aaron walked to the command circle where the pillar stood. The light that had moved up his arm now pulsed slowly in the pillar like a heartbeat. He placed his palm on the stone again. It answered with a warmth that felt almost like a word. In his mind came words that were not words. They were images, a wide ocean of steel, people in uniforms that shone like the pillars, and a long corridor of stars. He pulled his hand back and breathed. Laura watched him closely. "What did you feel?" she asked. Aaron paused. He looked to her and then to the rest of the team. "Like a story," he said, "like a map, like it wanted to remember." They found the first log by accident. In a room that looked like a library, Daniel found a slab that opened when he brushed it. A screen brightened. Strange letters burned blue and then shifted into a language that the ship could share with the crew. For the first time in a long time, a voice spoke in words that people could hear. It was not exactly a voice. It was more like a bridge. The slab told of a human empire that had once sailed the stars. It said the empire had been bright and that its ships had been proud. The log spoke of science and art, of cities that touched the clouds of far worlds, and of people who kept careful books of sky names. It also spoke of danger. The logs mentioned the elders. The elders were not a single species. They were a council of long-lived races who watched the younger ones. They told the logs that the elders had feared the empire. The logs said the elders had broken the memory of the human people and had forced them back. Memory was removed piece by piece. Whole histories were cut out and hidden. The log used a word that felt older than language: erasure. Maria read the log to the team. She read slowly so the words could sink in. The more she read, the more the room seemed to press around them. It was like opening a door on a cold day. The truth made the present feel thin and small. When the feed reached the stations around the world, it changed the debates into fever. People wanted answers. Politicians formed committees. The elders who had watched through distant means noticed the wake of the Armada. Messages arrived on the daybreak of their attention. Their tone was soft and sharp at once. They warned humanity not to wake the ships. They called the Armada a danger. They said they had acted to protect the galaxy. The Council of Elders sent envoys by projection. They did not come in ships at first. They sent a voice that sounded like music and mathematics. The voice said the ships must be sealed. It said that old power slept in those hulls and that sleeping power should not be touched. Diplomats on Earth answered politely. There was fear in their words and there was pride. The leaders did not want to begin war with beings who had kept watch over many worlds. Still, Aaron and Laura argued that the ships had been part of human history. They had a right to know. Laura said, "We are not thieves here. These are our bones." A global council voted to bring the ships into Earth orbit for study. The Armada rose slowly, engines alive with a sound like deep thunder. Machines that had slept for millennia woke and obeyed the hands that touched them. The world watched as huge hulls lifted through the thin sky and left a red plume above the deserts of Mars. As the ships reached orbit, the Elders' voice grew colder. Their messages turned into orders. They demanded that humanity lower the ships back into the ground and obey the quarantine. Their tone had a threat of command. Some nations agreed, others refused. The world split like ice on a spring river. Inside the command ship, Daniel and Maria worked to read more logs. Each log added new pieces to the story. They learned that the Armada had been a shield. It had been meant to protect worlds and to keep safe a library of human knowledge. The logs spoke of a war that had almost destroyed the stars. The Elders had used a trick in the end. They had erased the memory of the human empire and left them to begin again on a small blue planet. When the Elders learned of the logs, they called the Armada a weapon. They insisted that any activation could wake old enemies. They spoke of balance. To people who had never seen a sky city, these arguments sounded like waves breaking on a strange shore. The argument reached Aaron's ears and made him feel something fierce and new. He thought of the hand that had touched the pillar. He thought of the sleeping ships under the sands and of the faces of the people who had found this place. He thought of the logs that spoke of a history taken from the hands of his children. He stood again in the command circle and addressed the people who had gathered on the station. He spoke to the cameras and to the crew. He kept his words clear and simple. "We found our own bones," he said. "We will not let anyone bury them again." The Elders answered with a final warning in tone and in law. They said that if humanity refused to comply, they would place Earth under a quarantine that would cut off trade and aid and would watch every light that left the system. To people who had taken rocket rides and traded sensors across tiny distances, the threat of a quarantine felt like a hand closing on the throat. Some leaders bowed. They did not want a war with such powerful watchers. Others, who had seen the logs and felt the tide of memory inside them, chose to stand with Aaron and Laura. The world had always been messy. Now it was a thorned place where decisions were made under the hunger of history. As the Elder fleet started to send ships toward the solar system, human engineers began to test the Armada. They found that the ships were not simply machines. They had been built to respond to thought and to lineage. The systems listened for a pattern in the DNA of their pilots and for the rhythm of human speech. When Aaron and Laura passed over control panels, lights followed like constellations waking. Training began in silence and in noise. Pilots learned new controls that moved like the old logs had described. They practiced maneuvers in simulators. The Armada taught them a language of motion. Human hands had to learn to think in a different kind of music. Not everyone trusted the Armada. Protests marched in the cities. People who had lost family in old wars feared more war. They shouted and held signs. The world was full of grief and hope and sharp edges. Yet among the chaos there was a deeper quiet, the quiet of people learning they had been larger than they were told. One night Daniel found a small room marked Memory Archive. The door opened with a breath. Inside were rows of crystals that shone with internal lights. He touched one and a picture filled the room. It showed a child laughing in a city that hung above a sea. It showed a woman playing a violin on the deck of a ship. Nothing like this existed in living memory. The images were old and true. Daniel forced himself to breathe slowly so the sight would not rush him. In the council chambers of the elders, the debate split like a fault. Some elders believed humanity could be guided. Others believed history could not be allowed to start again. Their words moved like cold air. Outside their council, their fleets began to gather. On Earth, people packed for possible exile and for possible victory. They wrote letters both hopeful and frightened. The world held its breath. Aaron sat in the command circle and closed his eyes. He did not feel proud as in tales. He felt the weight of choices that reached beyond his skin. He touched the pillar again and remembered the ocean of steel that the log showed him. He wanted to ask the ship a question, but he did not know how. The ship had its own silence. Laura found him there and sat beside him on the hard floor. She did not speak at first. When she did, her voice was small. "We can learn from this," she said. "We can be better." Aaron opened his eyes and looked at her. The ship hummed like a heart in sleep. "We will learn," he said, "and we will not let fear decide for us." They did not know how the elders would test them. They did not know if the Armada would obey fully. Yet in the quiet between their words, a promise grew. The ancient ships had given a key. Now it was up to people to decide how to turn it. Far away in the darkness between the stars, something like attention turned toward the solar system. The Armada's light had sent ripples. Old watchers stirred. The elders prepared their fleet. The first move in a long game was set. In a small room under the command deck, Maria wrote new notes into her recorder. Her voice was steady. She listed dates and names and the words the logs had used. She said the logs had given them a right to truth. She said the Armada was not a simple weapon. It was a story waiting to be read by its people. Aaron listened to the recorder later that night. He lay on a crate and stared at the ceiling. The ship made slow sounds as it adjusted. He thought of the child in the old image. He thought of the future that might open. Outside, the first shapes of the elder fleet moved like long shadows toward the bright point of the solar system. The world watched and feared and prepared. Inside the Armada, people read and learned and touched the cold memory of bones. No one knew how the first battle would be fought. No one knew the shape of the peace that might follow. But in the hush of the command room, with the pillar's light breathing at their side, humans felt the return of something old and the start of something new. They had found their own history. That alone had changed everything. The silence inside the command ship did not last. As days passed, more lights woke across the Armada. The ships that had once rested under the sands of Mars began to hum with long-lost energy. There were soft vibrations under the floors. New corridors opened without anyone touching them. Metal panels shifted like a machine stretching after a long sleep. Aaron Blake stood on one of the walkways and watched as the main engines glowed with a pale blue light. He felt the same strange warmth he had felt when he first touched the pillar. It was as if the ship knew he was there, as if it recognized him. Laura Price stood beside him. She crossed her arms and looked through the window. "We still do not know what woke the rest of the ships," she said. "No one touched their pillars." "Maybe they woke because the first one woke," Aaron said. "Maybe they are linked." Daniel Ross entered the room with a tablet full of readings. He looked tired. His hair was messy and his hands trembled slightly. "The signal is spreading farther than we thought," he said. The moment the second ship woke, all of them began to echo the same pattern. It is like they are calling to something far away. Maria Hill followed him, her eyes heavy from long nights reading logs. "Or calling someone," she said quietly. "The logs mention guardians. They mention old enemies. Maybe the signal is a warning." Aaron felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Do you think the elders know what the signal means?" Maria nodded slowly. "I think they know too well." The news reached Earth in waves. Reporters talked about the awakening ships with shaky voices. People posted videos online showing the Armada glowing in orbit like a ring of quiet storms. Some felt pride. Others felt the dread of something too large for human hands. Soon after, the elders sent their final message. It came as a bright pulse of sound and light in every major city. The message was short. "Humans of Earth, you have awakened what must sleep. We place your world under quarantine. Do not activate the Armada further. Do not attempt to use it. If you resist, we will intervene." World leaders argued on camera. Some believed the elders wanted to protect the galaxy. Others believed they simply wanted to control humanity again. The argument became sharper when the first elder ships were detected at the edge of the solar system. Laura studied the sensor maps. They are not sending a small force, she said. This is a full fleet. Aaron stood behind her, his arms tense. They are preparing for war. Daniel slammed his tablet on the table. They fear the Armada, he said. That is why they erased human history the first time. They feared what we could build. Maria leaned on the rail and closed her eyes. The log said humans once made choices that shaped whole star systems, she whispered. Maybe that power frightened the elders. The command ship vibrated again. A soft voice, not human, filled the room. It spoke through the lights, through the walls, through the quiet hum of the engines. Descendant recognized. Fleet alignment in progress, awaiting directive. Aaron froze. Did you all hear that? Laura swallowed. The ship is talking to you. Daniel stared at the glowing panels. It says you are a descendant. That means the old empire was truly human. Aaron approached the command pillar. The light inside the stone brightened as he came close. He placed his hand on it. The warmth spread through him again, stronger now. The ship's voice returned. The elders approach. They once broke our memory. They cannot be allowed to break it again. Aaron pulled his hand away, shaking from the force of the message. The ship knows what is happening, he said. It knows the elders. The others stared at him with wide eyes. Maria whispered, "This is more than a machine." On Earth, protests grew louder. People shouted that humanity should stand tall. Others begged their leaders to surrender the Armada before war came to their doorstep. The Global Council called an emergency meeting. Aaron and Laura were summoned by video. A leader with a tired face asked them, "Captain Blake, is there any chance the Armada can be controlled? Can it be deactivated?" Aaron shook his head. "The ships are alive in their own way. They woke because they chose to wake. We do not have the power to put them back to sleep." Another leader spoke sharply. "Then we must comply with the elders' demands. Earth cannot win a war with them." Laura stepped in. "We do not seek war, but we must understand that the elders erased our past once. If we allow them to control us again, we may never learn who we were." The room grew tense. Voices rose. Some shouted that the Armada was a threat to the galaxy. Others shouted that it was humanity's birthright. No vote could settle the fear in the room. When the transmission ended, Aaron walked back to the window and stared at the fleet outside. The ships hung in a perfect formation as if they were waiting. "What do we do now?" Laura asked. Aaron did not answer at first. He breathed slowly and tried to steady himself. "We prepare," he said finally. "If the elders believe we are a threat no matter what we do, then running will not help." Daniel checked his readings again. "The Armada is waking faster," he said. "Some of the smaller ships have opened new bays. The flight decks are active. We could fly them." Laura raised a brow. "Do we know how?" Daniel smiled, a tired, nervous smile. "Sort of." The next days were full of training. Pilots climbed into the small ships, which looked like sharp metal wings. The ships moved when they touched the controls, almost as if they understood the pilots' thoughts. The learning curve was steep. Some pilots crashed in simulations. Others moved with surprising grace. Laura took command of a squadron. She practiced for hours each day, pushing the ships to see how they reacted. She learned that they accelerated faster than any known craft. They turned with fluid motions that made her heart race. Aaron trained as well, but he also spent long hours trying to understand the command ship's deeper systems. He touched the pillar again and again, learning the way it replied. It showed him images, a great war in the past, a network of stargates collapsing, and a council of elders watching in fear. Maria watched the projections from the logs. She wrote constantly, trying to document everything before the elders arrived. She feared the elders would try once again to erase the past. Daniel dug into the engineering bays, examining components that seemed impossible. He found coils that folded space, reactors that generated power without fuel. He whispered to himself often, trying to make sense of it all. "We could never build this today," he said one night, "but our ancestors did." As the elder fleet drew closer, tensions on Earth reached a breaking point. Food shipments were delayed due to the quarantine. Trade was stopped. People protested in the streets. Some nations blamed others. The planet felt like it was tilting toward chaos. Aaron received another message from Earth. A leader with sharp eyes told him, "Captain, if you take the Armada into battle, you may start a war that we cannot win." Aaron looked into the camera and answered, "I understand, but the elders have already decided we are dangerous. If we surrender now, we surrender our history and our future. When the call ended, Laura walked up to him. "You sounded calm," she said. "I was not calm," he replied. The Elder fleet entered the outer edge of the solar system. Their ships were long and curved, glowing with dim green light. They moved in perfect silence. The sight of them made every human sensor operator go pale. On the command ship, the lights dimmed. A new voice filled the room deeper than before. "Enemy vessels detected, ancient threat, defensive protocol awaiting command." Aaron felt the weight of the words. "We are not ready," he whispered. Laura stood beside him. "We may never be fully ready." Daniel and Maria joined them. The four stood together, looking at the hologram of the approaching fleet. Maria said quietly, "It begins." The elders sent another message. This time their tone was not calm. "Humans, you have ignored our warnings. Stand down and surrender the Armada. If you refuse, we will neutralize your fleet." Aaron looked at the others. "What do we do?" Laura answered first. "We stand," Daniel nodded. "We cannot let them erase us again." Maria lifted her chin. "History belongs to its people." Aaron turned to the pillar. The light inside it pulsed like a heartbeat waiting for a signal. He placed his hand on the smooth surface. "Activate defensive formation," he said. The ship responded instantly. Lights spread across the walls. The engines roared to life. Outside, the entire Armada shifted into a new pattern, a ring around the command ship. Pilots rushed into their small ships. Laura ran to her squadron. She placed her hand on the control panel and felt the ship open around her. "All ships form up," she said. "Stay close. Follow the command ship's lead." In the command room, Aaron felt the ship moving under his feet. The engines pushed forward with smooth power. The Armada's ships followed in perfect harmony. Daniel reported, "Elder ships are charging weapons." Maria whispered a quick prayer. Aaron stared at the stars ahead. "This is it," he said. As the two fleets drew closer, a strange stillness settled across the ship. The last seconds before contact stretched into something fragile. Then the first Elder beam fired. The light cut across the darkness and hit one of the smaller ships. The shield flashed. The ship spun but recovered. Laura shouted into the calm, evasive pattern. The Armada broke formation and moved like a living storm. The small ships twisted and curved in tight spirals. The command ship pulsed with energy. Aaron felt the ship guiding him like a teacher showing old steps. "Divert power to forward shield," he said. The ship obeyed. The elders fired again. The beam struck the shield and cracked across its surface like lightning. Daniel shouted, "Their weapons are stronger than expected." Maria watched the readings. "But we are holding." Laura led her squadron around the side of the Elder fleet. Her ships weaved through the beams, dodging them with near impossible turns. She fired a pulse of blue energy that hit an Elder ship and knocked it off course. "They are not invincible," she said, but the Elders were relentless. More ships fired. More beams cut across the battlefield. Aaron braced himself. "All ships prepare for full engagement," he said. The Armada answered with a roar of engines. The battle had begun. And humanity, for the first time in a forgotten age, stood tall among the stars. The first battle near Jupiter did not begin with a single blow. It began with a slow rise of fear and a deep breath of courage. The ancient Armada formed its lines around the command ship while the Elder fleet spread out like a dark net across the stars. The blue storms of Jupiter swirled far below them, glowing like a giant eye watching the fight. Aaron Blake stood in the command room with both hands on the control pillars. The lights of the ship pulsed under his palms. He could feel the ship's attention, as if it waited for his thoughts. He did not speak. He knew the ship heard him anyway. Laura Price led the smaller ships ahead of the formation. Her squadron moved like silver wings cutting through space. Her voice came through the comms, steady and calm even though her heart raced. "Stay tight. Do not break formation unless you have to," she said. Daniel Ross sat at a console beside Aaron. He watched energy readings flow across the screens faster than he could track. "Their weapons charge faster than ours," he said, "but our shields are holding better than expected." Maria Hill stood near the back of the room, holding her tablet close to her chest. She felt out of place among the engines and battle lights, but the logs she studied told her she needed to be here. The ship responded to the past, and she was the one who understood the fragments of that past. The first Elder beam flashed again. It cut across the front line of the Armada, hitting two ships. The shields flared bright blue, then softened. The ship stayed steady. Aaron braced himself. "Adjust shield layer 3. Redirect power from the aft engine," he said. The ship obeyed without delay. Screens lit up with steady lines of energy shifting through invisible channels. Laura's voice came through again. "Enemy fighters incoming. 20 fast units splitting into 2 groups." Her squadron moved to intercept. The smaller ships flew with a grace that was not natural. They twisted and curved with motions that felt alive, reacting faster than any human reflex. The elder fighters fired thin beams of green light. Laura dodged and fired back. Her pulse struck one of the enemy ships, which cracked and spun away. Daniel watched the feed. "These ships know us," he said softly. "They react before we think." Maria looked at him. "The log said the Armada was built to fight alongside humans, not just for them." Another elder beam shot across the battle, hitting a small Armada ship. This time the shield flickered. The ship drifted for a moment. Laura shouted, "We need cover." Aaron felt the command ship surge with energy. The ship's deep voice echoed through the room. "Fleet alignment, defensive pattern Delta." The Armada moved into a curved formation, shielding the damaged ship. The movement was so smooth that even Aaron was startled. He whispered, "You knew what we needed." The ship glowed brighter in answer. But the elders were not slowing down. More ships appeared on the horizon of space, rising from behind Jupiter's shadow. Their green lights spread across the dark like growing vines. Daniel's face turned pale. "Their reinforcements have arrived. This is not even half of their full fleet." Aaron looked out at the battle. The Armada was strong, but the elders had numbers. The fight would not end quickly. Laura's squadron cut through the enemy lines again. Her ship rolled as beams flashed past. She felt sweat slide down her back. She kept her focus sharp. "Do not let them circle behind us," she shouted. Her pilots answered with quick words and turned their ships. The silver wings of the Armada glowed bright against the shadows. Inside the command ship, Maria studied the symbols glowing across the walls. "The ship is awakening new systems," she said. "It is searching for something. I think it is searching for the core intelligence mentioned in the logs." Daniel turned. "The one that can coordinate the entire Armada," Maria nodded. "Yes, if we find it, we may gain full control." Aaron glanced at her. "Where is it?" Maria stared at the glowing marks. "Not here." "Somewhere deeper inside the ship." Daniel stood. "I'll go. Someone has to find it." Maria held up her tablet. "I will come too. The logs may help us read the markings." Aaron wanted to argue, but another elder beam shook the ship. The lights dimmed for a moment. He turned back to the pillar. "Go, quickly." Daniel and Maria hurried out of the command room and into the long corridor. The walls shifted with gentle light, showing symbols that moved like flowing water. Maria traced them with her fingers. "This way," she said. Back in the command room, the battle grew more intense. The elder fleet fired again and again. The Armada answered with blue pulses of light that cut through the dark. Some elder ships cracked open. Others fell back, but still more came. Laura's squadron flew into the thick of it. She fired another pulse that struck an elder fighter, but the enemy changed their pattern. They began forming a circle around her squadron. Laura realized the trap too late. "They're surrounding us," she said. Aaron heard her voice and felt a surge of dread. "Pull back, Laura." "I can't," she replied. "If we turn, they'll hit the rear ships." The elder circle tightened. Green beams shot in every direction. Laura's ship shook violently. Sparks flew inside her cockpit. She gritted her teeth. "Hold together," she whispered to her ship. Aaron turned to the pillar. "Give them cover, now." The command ship flashed with bright blue light. A burst of energy shot out around it, forming a temporary shield bubble. The elder beams weakened as they hit the bubble. Laura's squadron used the opening to break free. Her breathing slowed as she pulled away from the circle. "Thank you," she whispered. In the lower decks, Daniel and Maria reached a sealed door. Symbols glowed across it. The air felt heavier. Daniel touched the door. It opened with a deep rumble. Inside was a large chamber. At the center floated a sphere of white light. It pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart. Maria's voice shook. "This is the core intelligence." Daniel stepped forward. "How do we wake it?" Maria held up her tablet. The log symbols aligned into words. "It says the core will wake for a true descendant of the ancient empire, someone recognized by the Armada." Daniel frowned. "Aaron?" "Yes," Maria said. "We need Aaron here." Back in the command room, damage reports rolled in. Aaron saw more Elder ships appearing on the sensors. Laura flew back into formation. Her ship was scratched and scorched, but still flying. "We cannot keep this up forever," she said. Daniel's voice came through the comm. "Aaron, we found the core intelligence. You need to come now." Aaron looked at the battle, then at Laura's struggling squadron, then at the pillars. He made his choice. "Laura, you have command of the fleet while I'm gone." Laura's voice cracked. "Aaron, this is not the time for hero choices." "We need the core," he said. "Buy me time." He left the command room at a run. Laura steadied her breath. "All ships regroup. Hold the line." Aaron reached the chamber quickly. When he stepped inside, the sphere of white light brightened. "Maria, step back. It recognizes you." The sphere's voice filled the room. It was deeper and older than anything they had heard from the ship. "Descendant of the first makers, you carry the memory, you carry the right." Aaron approached slowly. "The elders are attacking us. We need your help." The sphere pulsed. "The elders fear what they destroyed. They fear the return of the lost empire." Aaron swallowed. "Then help us fight." The sphere expanded, filling the room with bright lines of ancient symbols. "Connection beginning," it said. "Prepare your mind." Aaron reached out his hand. The moment he touched the sphere, the world vanished. His mind flooded with images. He saw cities floating above oceans. He saw fleets larger than anything today. He saw humans speaking languages that sounded like music. He saw battles in deep space where stars dimmed from the force of weapons. He saw the elders coming. He saw the moment the elders erased humanity's memory, soft light pouring into minds, wiping away every story. Aaron gasped and dropped to one knee. Daniel caught his shoulder. "Aaron, are you okay?" Aaron opened his eyes, breathing hard. "They stole everything," he whispered. "They stole who we were." The core intelligence spoke again. "Full link complete. Armada control restored. Issue your command." Aaron rose slowly. In the command room, the ship lit up. New symbols appeared across the walls. Laura looked around in shock. "What is happening?" The ship's deep voice filled the space. "Core intelligence active. Fleet coordination engaged." Suddenly the entire armada shifted into perfect formation, every ship moving as if guided by one mind. Laura felt tears rise in her eyes. "Aaron did it," she whispered. Outside, the elder fleet hesitated. Their formation shook as they watched the armada come alive. Aaron's voice came across the comm, steady and calm. "This is Captain Aaron Blake. The armada is fully awakened. We will defend humanity. We will not bow to those who erased our past." Laura felt strength rush through her. "All ships follow his lead." Aaron raised his hand toward the sphere. "Armada, advance." The armada surged forward with a bright wave of blue light. The second stage of the battle began. The elder ships fired wildly, but the armada moved with impossible speed. The small ships danced between beams and struck with sharp bursts of energy. Larger ships fired wide arcs of blue light that pushed the enemy back. Daniel shouted, "Their lines are breaking." Maria watched the readings. "But they still have their superweapon." The words were true. The elders activated a large device at the center of their fleet. It glowed with green fire and pointed at the armada. Laura saw it first. "Aaron, that weapon will cut through all our shields." Aaron touched the sphere again. "Armada, shift into barrier formation." The ships moved instantly, forming a wide shield wall. The elder weapon fired, a green beam as wide as a city cut across space. The impact shook the armada. The shields flared white hot. Several small ships spun away, damaged. Laura's ship shook violently. "We cannot take another hit like that," she said. Aaron gritted his teeth. "We will not." He connected fully to the sphere. His mind felt like it was on fire, but he held on. "Armada, prepare counterstrike." The ships glowed brighter. "Target enemy superweapon." Laura whispered, "Please work." Aaron raised his hand. "Fire." A wave of blue light shot from the entire armada. It hit the elder superweapon dead center. The weapon exploded into a burst of green shards. The elder fleet fell into chaos. Laura shouted with joy. "We did it!" But the battle was not over. Aaron stood trembling, still linked to the sphere. He felt the elders gathering for a final strike. He felt the armada waiting for his next order. He opened his eyes. "This is not the end," he said quietly. "It is the beginning of humanity's return." The battle near Jupiter had shaken the armada, but it had not broken it. The elder fleet had lost their superweapon, and for the first time in a very long time, they began to fall back. Their green lights flickered as they tried to reorganize their lines, but the Armada moved faster and stronger than before. The core intelligence guided every ship with sharp precision, and Aaron Blake felt the energy of the ancient fleet flowing through him like a river of light. Still, the fight was not over. The Elders were wounded, not defeated. They had ruled the galaxy for ages, and they would not let go of their authority without a final attempt to crush those who threatened their control. Aaron stood in the chamber of the core and kept one hand on the glowing sphere. It warmed his skin and filled his mind with images of old battles, long ago when the ancient human empire had stood tall and unbroken. He could feel the weight of that history now. It pushed against his chest like a heavy stone, but it also gave him strength. Daniel Ross stood beside him, watching the shifting lights of the sphere. "Aaron, your connection is stable, but you cannot hold it forever," he said. "The strain will be too much." Aaron breathed slowly. "I know, but the Armada needs guidance. The Elders will strike again." Maria Hill stood near the doorway with her tablet. The logs she had read had changed her view of everything. The galaxy was not the peaceful place the Elders had claimed it to be. It had been shaped by fear, by power, and by quiet choices made in secret. "The Elders will not accept their loss," she said softly. "They fear us more than they fear anything else." The ship's deep voice filled the chamber. "Enemy fleet reorganizing. Energy spike detected. Probable retaliation imminent." Daniel turned quickly. "They are preparing something big, maybe a fleet-wide overload." Aaron kept his hand on the sphere. "We must finish this before they strike again." Meanwhile, in the open space above Jupiter's storms, Laura Price's squadron circled around the edges of the Elder fleet. Her ship was damaged but still responsive. She sat in the cockpit with tight hands on the controls. She looked at the large enemy vessels gathering into a new shape. "They are forming a spear formation," Laura said. "This is not a retreat. This is their final strike." The pilots around her murmured in worry. Laura steadied her voice. "Prepare for a full push. We cannot let them reach the command ship." A small ship flew beside her. The pilot, a young man named Sam, said, "Commander, our numbers are thinning. We lost 6 ships already." Laura closed her eyes for a moment. "Then we hold harder," she said. "We protect the Armada no matter what." In the command room above, light burst across the screens. The Elder fleet was shifting, moving into a long line aimed straight at the Armada. Maria gasped. "This is a death strike. They will sacrifice their own ships just to break us." Daniel shook his head. "That is madness." "It is fear," Maria whispered. The ship's deep voice echoed again. "Recommend immediate activation of Defense Protocol Omega." Aaron opened his eyes. "Show me." The sphere projected a vision into the room. The Armada's ships moved into a massive ring, shaping a shield barrier with all their power. It was a formation made only for the greatest danger. It would protect them from almost anything, but it would also drain nearly all of the Armada's energy. Daniel stared. "If we use this, we cannot attack again. We will be helpless after." Maria swallowed hard. "But if we do not use it, their strike will destroy us." Aaron looked at the sphere, then at his crew, then at the stars outside the window. He knew the choice was heavy. He knew it would change everything. "Activate Protocol Omega," he said. The ship responded at once. "Confirming." All vessels shifting formation. Across the battlefield, the Armada moved like a single enormous creature. Ships turned and rotated into a perfect ring. Blue energy pulsed between them, forming a circle of light. Laura's squadron fell back to join the formation. She watched as the ancient ships glowed brighter than she had ever seen. It felt like watching a sunrise in the middle of space. "We are ready," Laura said. At the same time, the Elder fleet surged forward. Their formation tightened. Dozens of large ships glowed with green fire. Smaller fighters swarmed around them like angry insects. The Elder voice broadcast across every channel. "Humans, your return is a threat to the balance. You will not be allowed to rise. Your empire died by our hand once. It will not rise again." Aaron answered calmly. "We are not your children. We are not your property. We choose our own path." The Elders fired. A massive wave of green energy rushed toward the Armada. Was brighter and wider than anything before. The energy beam cracked across the darkness and roared with a force that shook space itself. Then it hit the ring. The Armada's shield exploded in blue light. Shockwaves rippled through every ship. Laura felt her cockpit shudder. Daniel grabbed the edge of a console to stay on his feet. Maria held onto a railing with both hands. Aaron stood firm, his hand still on the sphere, though the force pushed his body backward. The light from the shield blinded him for a moment. The green beam pressed into the ring of blue, trying to force its way through. The Armada held against it, but the pressure grew stronger with every second. "Shields dropping," Daniel shouted. "We cannot hold for long." Aaron clenched his teeth. "Increase output from the core, feed all auxiliary power into the ring." The sphere pulsed. "Warning, power levels exceed safe thresholds." "Do it," Aaron said. The sphere obeyed. The ring grew brighter. The blue shield thickened. The elder beam pushed harder. Base shivered around them. Laura watched the shield trembling. "Come on," she whispered. "Hold together." The elder beam surged one last time. The shield cracked and then stabilized again. A long moment passed. Then the elder beam flickered. Then it died. Silence filled the battlefield. The elder fleet's formation broke as their main strike failed. Their ships dimmed. Some began to drift. Others turned away. "They are falling back," Maria said. "They have no more power for another strike." Daniel stared at the screens. "We survived." Aaron did not celebrate yet. He could feel something else through the sphere. A signal, a message. The elders broadcast again, but their tone had changed. "Humans, you have restored what we once took. We cannot defeat you without destroying ourselves. The quarrel ends here." Laura lowered her head. "They are surrendering." Maria felt tears in her eyes. "No, they are giving up control." The elders spoke again. "The galaxy will watch your path, but hear this: power without memory is dangerous. Power without wisdom is death. Choose wisely, descendants of the lost empire." The transmission ended. The elder fleet turned and began to leave the solar system. No one on the Armada spoke for a long time. Then a soft voice broke the silence. "Victory." It was the ship. Laura let out a long breath of relief. "We did it," she said. Daniel smiled weakly. "We really did." Maria closed her eyes. "Humanity has its history back." Aaron removed his hand from the sphere and sank to his knees. The strain had finally caught up with him. Daniel and Maria rushed to his side. "Aaron, are you okay?" Maria asked. He breathed slowly and nodded. "I'm fine, just tired." The sphere pulsed gently. "Connection terminated, rest required." Aaron stood with help and looked at the glowing room. "Thank you," he whispered to the sphere. The ship answered. "The fleet exists to serve humanity. We will guide. You will choose." Later, back in the command room, Laura returned with her squadron. Many of the small ships were damaged. Some pilots were carried off for medical care, but they were alive. Laura walked up to Aaron. "We held the line," she said. Aaron smiled. "I knew you would." Daniel checked the readings one more time. "The Armada is stable again. We took heavy damage, but nothing beyond repair." Maria looked out at the stars. "Now what happens?" Aaron stood with his crew beside him and thought about the future. Earth was no longer small. Humanity was no longer weak. The ancient empire had returned, and with it came new responsibility. "We rebuild," Aaron said. "We learn who we were, we learn who we can be." Laura nodded. "And we protect our world." Maria smiled softly. "And we remember." Daniel folded his arms. "And we explore again like our ancestors." The ship's voice echoed gently through the room. "The galaxy awaits." Outside, the Armada glowed softly in orbit above the swirling clouds of Jupiter. They were ships of an old age, but they now belonged to a new future. Humanity had stood against the elders and survived. They had reclaimed their history. They had lit a new spark in the galaxy. And from this day on, no one would forget who they were. The ancient human empire had risen again. And this time, it would not be erased.